I should imagine 15 seconds must have elapsed by now. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Audit and Standards meeting. Do we have any apologies?
Chairman, I've not received any apologies. I'm just checking if it's working on YouTube.
Item number 2 then. Do we have any declarations? No. Let me know when you're ready.
I've just asked IT to check everything's working properly and it is streaming.
Yeah, it all seems to be on YouTube. All good.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we have no apologies then. Item number 2 then. Do we have any declarations of interest? And because I can't monitor all the screens simultaneously, if you need to speak, by all means, just let me know. And I'm not seeing anybody who's declaring interest, so I'll take that as no. Item number 3 then, the minutes of the last.
Paul, we're getting a lot of feedback with your sound. I don't know if there's anything you can do about it.
Same thing that I normally do, so I don't know. Is everybody getting feedback?
Yes.
If everyone other than Councillor Waring can mute their microphones, and we'll see if that helps.
Yeah. Okay, I think everybody's muted. Obviously, I don't know whether that's going to actually make a significant difference to it, but we'll have to just try it. Is that any clearer for anybody? Yeah, okay, excellent, right. Item number 3 then, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of November. Has everybody had a chance to look at those, and does anybody have any comments to make in relation to them? No.
I propose we take them, Chair.
I'm not seeing anybody. Sorry?
I propose we take them, Chair. Accept them.
Yeah, yeah. We'll accept those as a true record then. Now, for whatever reason, we don't appear to have Andrew Smith here yet, so we'll pass over item number 4 and move on to item number 5 and then go back to it, hopefully, if he's able to join us. Item number 5 then, the internal audit update for Q3. You can find that on pages 25 to 30 on your agenda, and Claire's here and she's going to just give us a quick run through so that give us any salient points on that. If you wouldn't mind, Claire, thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. Thank you, Chair. Just checking you can hear me okay, because this is the first time using a new laptop. Good, great, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a report to update you on the third quarter activity for internal audit. So that covers the period the 1st of October to the 31st of December. Just turning over the page to page 26, you've got a table at the top of the page there, which just talks about the audits that we had in progress at the end of December. The quarter did prove to be still challenging for us in internal audit in terms of trying to get reviews completed, both because of lack of resources on our side, and obviously people within Newcastle being busy as well with lockdown and dealing with the pandemic. So we are trying to progress work, and I'm pleased to say that following the end of December, we have now got the elections audit completed, so you'll see that at Q4, and we have started some of the Q4 work that we originally planned to start in terms of financial audits that we usually do leave until Q4. So we're doing those on a risk-based approach. Just to draw your attention to paragraph 2.2, SIPA have actually released some guidance around the annual opinion. They obviously acknowledge that a lot of internal audit functions are in the same position that we are. They've had to reduce their work programmes due to lack of capacity with dealing with the pandemic. So they've actually put some guidance out for local authorities to help them in terms of trying to come up with an opinion for the year if they've done that reduced amount of work in the year. So just to let you know that we are currently considering that guidance, and that will form part of the work that we do when we wrap up the year's work in the Q4 and in the annual report. So at paragraph 2.3 and 2.4, we continue to monitor recommendations from previous audits that have been completed, and we're now up to 90%, which is pleasing. That's an increase from the previous quarter and close to that target of 96%. And you have got some details at Appendix A of the current recommendations that are still outstanding, and say we'll continue to chase those during Q4. I think that's all really I wanted to raise. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody have any questions for Claire on this report? I'm not seeing anybody. If you have a question, just give me a shout, please. No? Right, thank you very much then. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair.
I'm still not seeing Andrew, so we'll move on to item 6, which is the Q3 Corporate Risk Management Report. And Sarah's just going to give us a quick run through that. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew's just been sent the link so he can dial in to do the actual external audit letter. So he should be along shortly to do that audit letter. So the Corporate Risk Management Report for Q3, it's slightly changed since the report has actually been produced. I think on the recommendations there it states that there was 5 overdue risks reviews. Those 5 overdue risks have reduced now down to 2. The 5 risks were operational service level risks, and they're associated with the planning and development management team. So 3 of those risks have now been resolved, and then the 2 outstanding risks relate to building control. There's a risk of successful claim being made against building control, and a risk of a surplus or deficit within the building control budget being made. So quite general sort of risk there that you associate with having on that sort of particular service area. Other than those risk changes, there's been no significant changes from the Q2 report that was presented back last year. The issues sort of noted there is it just further audit assurance recommendations that have been asked to report overdue risks at 6 months out of date. The time of bringing the report, there was 5 overdue risks, as I've stated before. 3 of those have been resolved now, so there's only 2. There's Appendix A just details the corporate risks associated with the report, but there's been no sort of major changes, like I said before, from Q2. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report and feedback to the risk insurance team if anyone has any queries or anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Mike, did you want to say something?
Yes, please, Chair.
You muted, Mike.
Can you just confirm the 2 that are still outstanding for us, Sarah?
Yeah, the 2 outstanding relate to building control.
So it was, the first one was the risk of a successful claim being made against building control. And then the second one is any surplus or deficit against the building control budget. So thank you.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? I'm not seeing anybody. Shout out if there is anything. I can't see anything at the moment. No, right. That's lovely. Thanks very much, Sarah. And the only other thing that we do need to do in relation to that is we need to identify some of the risk profiles that we want to look at in further detail for the next meeting. Does anybody have any suggestions for those?
Chair, are these from the Appendix A list? Is that the sort of areas that you want to look at?
Yeah, I think it's from before. What we said was that we would actually scrutinise some of these risks in a little bit more detail and get a better feel for how they they come up with them and so on, just so that we could get a better understanding. I don't think it necessarily means that we've got to pick anything that we think is especially contentious or anything. It's just simply a case of us picking a couple of risks and then looking at them in more detail at the next meeting. So,
well, can I offer the air quality then, please, Chair? I think that's going to get bigger and bigger over the next 3 to 6 months. So I think if this committee's really au fait with it, that will help the council completely. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just get down to those things.
Can I suggest we look at the financial risk as well, please?
Financial risk, right? Financial risk, right? And shall we take one more? Does anybody have any suggestions for the third item? No, right.
Chair.
I'll.
Chair.
Yeah.
Can we add
on,
workforce then, please, as the last one?
Workforce.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so if you could pass that on, Sarah, to the team, and then we'll look at those in a little bit more detail at the next meeting, and hopefully, get a better understanding of how we come up with the risk descriptions and levels and so on. Right. Has Andrew managed to arrive yet? Or is he?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Right. So we'll move back to item 4 then. In that case,
Okay.
Andrew, if you're ready, take it away.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chair. So this is our annual audit letter. This is effectively repeats a lot of the messages that we communicated back to the committee in November in our audit findings report. The reason why we're bringing this to you is that this is effectively the public-facing document. It goes onto the council's website alongside the final signed statement of accounts. So this is effectively just the public-facing version of our audit findings report. Obviously, it doesn't change any of the messages that were communicated back to you in November. So we, as you may recall, we offered you an unqualified opinion upon the accounts, and also an unqualified opinion on your VFM conclusion as well. So I'm not going to repeat the detail simply on the basis that we covered that in detail in November. The one thing I just wanted to flag to the committee, and I'm sure you will want to discuss, is just on page 21 of the pack, which shows our audit fees for the year. You will see that our proposed total fee for the year is just short of 60,000. That compares to the planned fee that we reported back to you in March 2020 of just under 50,000, so just shy of a £10,000 increase. This increase was due to the cost of effectively the impact of COVID and various issues that arose from that, and we have been charging all of our local authority clients more in relation to COVID. And so it is comparable to that. I think what's probably worth just putting things into perspective around fees, because I appreciate that might look like quite a big fee increase in certainly in percentage terms. But if I take you back 10 years, and I was just pulling off the authorities' accounts earlier, and the council's audit fee just over 10 years ago was £190,000. If you apply inflation to get to today's prices, that would equate to a fee of £240,000 in today's money. So whilst the fee increase was big, it does only represent 25% of the fee that you paid just over 10 years ago. And from our perspective, the actual workload has actually increased of auditors. So whilst it's a big fee increase on the face of it, I do believe it still represents good value for money in terms of what's happened to audit fees over the last 10 years. You may be aware of the Redmond review. That report has clearly indicated that audit fees are too low, and that is compromising the effectiveness of audit. And you may be aware also that PSEA did commission an independent review of fees as well, and that highlighted the fragility of the audit market and that fees were too low as well. So that's kind of the context of what we're operating in at the moment. And I guess I do need to flag up for next year, we will be bringing a plan back to the committee in the future, but the fees will again go up for next year because there are changes to the work that we need to do around VFM. That's a significant change from what we've done in the past. Far more detailed piece of work is now required, and then also there's been some changes in auditing standards as well, which again requires additional work for us to do, and indeed will actually require some additional work from the authority as well. So we will obviously come back to the committee around next year's fees, but I did want to kind of, I guess, make you aware that there is going to be a general increase in fees to accommodate the extra work that's being asked of auditors. I'm sure you will have questions at least on the fees, but happy to take questions on the rest of the report as well, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I must admit, I was a little bit shocked when I saw the amount, and I do take on board your comments about the earlier years and how there was a dramatic decrease and so on. I just think from the point of view of the fact that obviously we're dealing with public money, you know, we have to, I mean, and obviously one of the things that's now in the audit obviously is value for money. And we just felt that it's something that if there is a significant increase, we should at least get it checked out. And if it's checked out, then, you know, it's deemed to be correct. And obviously where we're dealing with large increases, then, you know, it's just part of the process that we should actually do something like that. And, you know, make it clear there's absolutely no bad feeling about something like that. It's just simply, you know, what we should do as a responsible committee. Let me just have a look at it. There's one or two other people who want to ask. Mike, did you want to ask something?
Yes, please, Chair. And Andrew, obviously this isn't in any way questioning your professionalism. I don't for a second, but I think it's quite unhelpful to compare audit to a private audit today and the standards today to something that was happening on an internal audit 10 years ago, because we've got no way of saying what they were actually doing 10 years ago and what level of work they were doing internally. So I'm not sure that's a fair comparison. With regard to a proposed increase, and very much like you said, my gut feeling is that there probably needs to be an increase. Or if we were to try and do this with one of our partners somewhere else and just put the fee up, I think that would be a breach of contract. And I said that a year ago, and I strongly believe it again this time. You know, to serve the fait accompli that the contract's going to go up, even though there is a contract in place for a set fee, I feel very uncomfortable about that. But I also understand your point of view that the work needs doing. I get that, but I'm wondering why we're just ignoring the fact that there's a contract in place already. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Chair, do you want me to respond?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, first of all, it is relevant to compare an external audit today and 10 years ago, because ultimately what external audit does isn't fundamentally different, albeit the requirements to, if you like, deliver that opinion have actually increased in that period rather than decreased. So I do think there is relevance there. But I think, just to be absolutely clear, in terms of the PSCA contract, it is not a fixed fee within the contract. There is quite clearly within the contract a process for fee variations, which is what we're going through at the moment. And PSCA will review any additional fees that we propose, and indeed they are the body that ultimately authorise the increase or reject it. So there is a very clear process as part of the contract to vary the fee for changes where there's additional work required. So it just to be absolutely clear, the contract isn't a fixed fee. I guess the other thing that I would say is that the authority can, if it wanted to, come out of side of the PSCA contract and go to market itself and try to tender the audit. It is well within its gifts to do that if you were unhappy around the PSCA contract.
Thank you, Andrew. In relation to the COVID-19 increase, Andrew, is it possible that we're able to recover some of that? I think I don't know whether you touched on it before, but I've heard some comments that it may be possible to roll that into part of the increases in the COVID costs that local government's suffering.
Yes, that's correct. So most authorities up and down the country are including the COVID-19 related audit overrun on the returns back to MHCLG in order to, on the expectation that they'll be reimbursed for that. And I know some authorities that have successfully done that. And also looking ahead towards the next financial year, or current one you're in, 2021, we do understand that MHCLG have put aside a pot of around about £50 million, which they're going to allocate to the sector to pay for increases in audit fees to cover the additional work that they recognise is going to be needed next year. I'm not clear on how that money will be distributed yet, but I am aware that there is a pot of money there that the sector will have access to.
Thank you. Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah. Sarah, yeah.
You asked the question I was going to ask, but so I think maybe there is something there that we can try and do to try and recover at least some of this money. But I understand there's been extra work. How have you arrived at that £9,000? I know you can't itemise it tonight for us, but is it because you've got less reliance on the working papers or less reliance on our own internal audit section, or what's actually caused it to rise up to that £9,000? What's the major factor behind it, please, Andrew?
Okay. So, I mean, first of all, just to be clear, we have a timesheet system. So every time any member of the team is working on the audit, we charge it. So the hours that are behind the fees are simply from our timesheet system. But in terms of the £10,000 increase, that is purely to do with COVID, which has impacted in the accounts audit in several different ways. It did require us to revisit our audit planning and risk assessment work. We did have to do a lot of additional work on a lot of the estimates in the accounts, particularly around the valuation of land and buildings and the valuation of the pension liability, where there were material uncertainties issued by your valuer and actuary on that did require quite a bit of additional work. There was also additional work that we had to do as part of our VFM assessment around financial resilience. And then there was just simply the impact from remote working. Things just took longer, and that wasn't just unique to Newcastle. That's been the case on every audit, whether it's public sector, whether it's commercial audit. Remote working, doing the audit remotely, has had an impact, and it's just slowed things down between ourselves and clients. So some of it is just that, but there have been additional, if you like, technical issues that we've had to work upon as well as a result of COVID.
So it's a lot of it then is to do with sort of timescales. You actually had to spend longer because you've not been able to ask the question face to face and that sort of thing, rather than any issues with working papers or internal audits. Just want to make that clear. That's all.
That's true. Yeah, so there are no issues with the working papers that we received from the finance team. No, yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Well done, Sarah.
Yeah. Just one other thing, Andrew. Presumably, this current year will also be impacted in a similar manner. Have you got any sort of gut feel as to how much extra work may be involved, given that we've got issues with actuaries and things like that? I think most of us probably appreciate the fact that when you've got businesses that have been dramatically affected by the COVID outbreak, that property values and all sorts of other things can be affected. Have you any sort of gut feeling as to how this year, or the coming year audit, may be affected?
Yeah, we are still probably expecting there to be some additional work around anywhere with valuations or estimates. But to be honest, that is now kind of built into the fees, and they will obviously just need to be rolled forward. Where there are going to be fee increases over and above what you're seeing, what I'm reporting to you tonight for last year, is really around the code of audit practice changes, which is largely around the change around the value for money work, which is quite a significant change from what we currently do. At the moment, it's very much exception based, whereas now we are going to have to assess the authority against 15 key lines of inquiry. So it's a far more involved piece of work. So the fee increases are really going to be for those scope changes in what we as external auditors need to do going forward. We are currently just consulting with PSCA, as all the other firms are, just around the implications of that additional work. So it's probably a bit too early for me to say, at least in a public forum, what I think what the fee increases are going to be for them. But they are going to be relatively sizable fee increases because the amount of work involved is a significant increase on what we're currently doing.
Okay. When do you think it's likely that you'll be coming back to us with that? Will it just be prior to the start of the audit this year, do you think?
Yeah, I can't. Sorry, I don't know the date of the next meeting, but I'm hoping to come back to the spring meeting with the audit plan. So I think it is that. I think it may be April. I'm not entirely sure, but that's the meeting that I'm hoping to deliver an audit plan, which would have the planned fee within it.
19th of April, that is, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, right, thank you for all that, Andrew. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah.
I'm looking for you, Barry.
Yeah. It's nothing. I don't know if it's Andrew or if somebody else can answer for on recommendations and action plan and the BPFE. It said the councillors reviewed the assets to reflect their actual lives. I'm just wondering if there's anything to come back off that.
Yeah, Chair, I can answer that one.
Yep.
Yes,
Thanks, Sarah.
It's this predominantly relates to the asset lives of it was the waste vehicles at the time, and some of the other equipment and VPE. We have built that into our additional reviews into our year-end process. Like I said last year when we started doing the audit, we have the SIP for asset management system where we've automated all the information onto a specific system. So the information is much more transparent, and we can review it a lot better than we could previously. We have better records to be able to do that, and that we've built that in as part of the process. So we use our equipment and our vehicles. We maximise the lives of those equipments, and our garage workshop helps us to do that with all our vehicles to make them last a bit longer than as long as we possibly can. So we're ensuring that those lives of those vehicles are
recorded properly in our asset management working papers.
I just wanted to make sure that we're getting sufficient value for money as and when we do dispose of them.
Yes, yeah, we do. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any other questions on the audit letters? Yeah.
Can I speak, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we're going to appeal to the PSAA to say, is this extra £9,000 justifiable, which presumably all councils are doing, because I imagine all councils have these sort of bills. If they turn around and say, no, it's fair enough, they've done the work, they should be paid, then we go ahead with that. But the second stroke of our sort of iron in the fire, if you like, is then we try to get MCHLG to see if we can wrap this all up with the other COVID related costs that we're having to pay. Is that a fair summary of where we are at this at the moment?
That was my understanding of it.
Yes, I can confirm that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Right. Okay. I'm not seeing any more hands. Barry, did you want to say something else?
No, that's it. No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Andrew. So we can say we've received the annual audit letter in that case. So the remaining two items, we've got the committee work plan, which is item number 7 on page 55, if you would like to have a look at that. Does anybody have anything that we're not already covering that they would like adding into the work plan for April?
Chair, can I just ask a quick query? Any further movement on standards training?
Right, yeah, we were due to have some standards training. I'll make a note of that and I'll chase that up. Obviously, it's been fairly difficult with the issues that we've had with COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. Chair, I can give you a brief update on standards training if that would assist.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please, Dan.
So members will recall that the LGA were in the process of revising the model code of conduct, taking on board the recent standards, inquiry into standards in public life report. Well, the LGA have recently published that now. So it's then a case of whether or not we're going to adopt it and then arrange some standards training from there. So that is in hand, but it has been moving quickly. Sorry, not as quickly as I would have liked, largely on account of awaiting developments on the national scene in relation to the model code. But I'll endeavour to get something through in terms of whether or not we're adopting that code, and then some training in the next couple of cycles, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions on the work plan?
Yes, if I may, Chair.
Okay, thank you all.
If I may.
Yeah.
Just looking at the work. Just looking at the work.
Sorry.
Just looking at the work plan. Understandably, impact of COVID-19 features in most of the periods. I haven't seen the scope of works for that, but I do think that it ought to be. I think it would help if we clarified, as part of that work, those work streams, both the positives and negatives. So clearly there'll be adverse effect on the borough council, its operations, etc., as a result of COVID, and the Grant Thornton identified some of those. But just to make sure that we don't lose sight of perhaps some benefits that have accrued in terms of operating costs, procedures, and lessons learned.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In that case, what we can do then, if we ask for a bit more detail in the April meeting about the positives and negatives and other effects.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously there's nothing positive about COVID, but actually, I think what a lot of organisations are learning, actually, it's caused people and organisations to think about how they go about things. And some of that has generated efficiencies and benefits. I'd hate to lose those as just part of a review, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, and any potential effects going forward and how it changes the business, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there are big changes to businesses in many respects. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Anybody? Anything else? No. Right. Okay. Thank you. Well, the only other remaining item is urgent business, and I've not been informed of any urgent business. So thank you all for your attendance, and we'll close the meeting. Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.